level, because our next speaker, Dr. Neel Shah, who is Assistant Professor of OBGYN and Reproductive Systems at Harvard Medical School, and perhaps even more pertinent to what he'll be talking about today, he's at Ariadne Labs, and there is Director of the Delivery Decision Making. He's also, and even more relevant, a member of the board of March for Moms. Neel is known in all circles that I know him through to be an extraordinarily kind, compassionate human being and provider, and beyond that, he's a mover and a shaker when it comes to understanding and doing something about systems change. And we've asked him to talk about disruption. That's what we need right now, right? Disrupt, innovate, what it takes to galvanize systems change. Thank you, Neel.
Thank you, Lois. I, probably like the rest of you, am still reflecting on what we just heard, and so I can't help but just start there a little bit. I mean, starting with Linda, so I mean, this is a large topic. How do you disrupt? How do you innovate? And it largely starts with asking the right questions. And the way that I heard your call to action, Linda, at the very end, at least, was asking fundamentally the right question, which is, how do we actually invest in the well-being of women at a level that reflects how much we truly value them in society? That's the first thing. That is the question at the end of the day. And then, in order to answer it, those of us who are in positions of power, in varying degrees, have to be able to get off of our defensive haunches and let go. That's what disruption is. It's embracing letting go. And so we have to be able to see the humanity in the services that we're providing in order to truly see the mistakes. And so stories like Phyllis's, lines like, because you're pregnant with diabetes, we can't let you move, or, at a 3-year-old, I'm still, going through my postpartum experience. And that ultimately helps get to the sort of plane that Haywood is on, where you're sort of more enlightened and you can see what the systemic causes of all this. But here's really what I wanted to say. I think it's all actually fairly simple. A couple of things. The first is picking up where Lois left off. The dominant cause of suffering in the world right now is not lack of knowledge. It's lack of execution on the knowledge that we already have. And so all of us who care about reducing suffering have a set of decisions that we have to make. To the extent that this is meant to be a turning point meeting, we have to decide, all of us, are we only going to invest our limited time and energy and resources in promulgating ideas, or are we also going to invest in the follow-through of translating those ideas into action? And it has different implications for different people who are here, so I'll call you out. If you are the National Institutes of Health, are we primarily going to invest in large-scale tests of effectiveness in highly controlled settings? Or are we also going to invest in the feasibility of implementing those ideas in a number of different contexts, which is harder and more expensive and riskier? For those of us who are healthcare improvers, are we primarily going to spend our time collating best practices and then expecting people to adopt them, or are we going to truly co-create better ways forward with the people and the communities that we serve? And those seem like rhetorical questions for the people in this room, but they're genuine ones, because the world is sort of set up in a way where, at least for me, in academic medicine, promulgating ideas and doing randomized controlled trials is where the existing award system is. It's not really in what I've spent most of the last decade trying to do, which is think about failures of execution. So I just want to offer a couple of things that I think that I've learned over the last decade about dealing with execution failure that may be useful in further brainstorming at this meeting. The first is that when it comes to failures of execution, there are two ways that we hurt people. One is when we do too little too late, and the other is when we do too much too soon. And we need to retain the capacity to think about both at the exact same time. Because the last several decades of trying to make people better off have solely dealt with the too little too late problem. And they've led to a place where 99% of American women deliver on labor and delivery units that look like intensive care units surrounded by surgeons. And as a consequence of that, 1 in 3 Americans gets major abdominal surgery to give birth, and 1 in 10 babies goes to the NICU. So we have to be able to think about both. The second is that, and I think this is already emerging out of the conversation this morning, is that we can't be designing solutions just within what we've called silos here, but really sort of the traditional lines of diabetes care, cardiovascular care, et cetera care. When people are vulnerable to the types of harms that we care about, there are particular periods of their lives where they're vulnerable. And the one that's relevant to this conversation is the period of everybody's life where you're trying to start or grow your family. And that sort of brings us to the next lesson, I think, which is that safety cannot be the goal. Like, that's the floor of what we should expect. Part of being disruptive is really envisioning the whole thing that people deserve, the ceiling. Right? People have goals in labor other than simply emerging unscathed. And so we need to attend to that. We need to make sure that people are getting care that's not just safe, but also supportive and empowering in all the ways that matters. And when you really sort of step back and think about it, every person deserves to start or grow their family with dignity. And really to do that, you have to be able to access care that's not just safe, but also supportive and empowering, and reliably so. And this is something that we fall short on in every geographic corridor of this country and every segment of society, from the Upper East Side of Manhattan to Tulsa, Oklahoma to Tampa, Florida. The fourth is that if we really care about equity as part of all of this, it has to be a primary goal. It can't be the afterthought. And that might seem obvious, but it's really not the way things work right now. You can move the needle on average and make things better on average, and actually make disparities worse, right? Because usually the people who are the most willing to adopt an innovation are the ones who are most able to. So just because people seem really ready to adopt something in Nashville doesn't mean you shouldn't start in Memphis, because the people in Memphis can do it, the people in Nashville definitely can do it, even if it's harder. And finally, I think as people who are interested in disruption and innovation, we have to start thinking like product developers, not just idea developers. And we have to make sure that we're not just creating products, but actual marketplaces to receive them. Because we have a ton of ideas, and then we don't really have people that are ready and willing and able to receive them. And so I know that's a little bit of an abstract idea, but what I really mean by that is two things: to create a marketplace for supporting women and maternal health. We need to be able to create an aligned value proposition for everybody involved, which means, it turns out childbirth is the #1 reason for hospitalization in this country. So 25% of all hospitalizations are either a mom or a baby. And that means that we spend 0.6% of our $17 trillion GDP just on hospitalizing people for childbirth. And yet, whether it's the NICHD or really any other investor in maternal well-being, it's really a sliver of where the investment is. So how do we go from a place where for Amazon or Microsoft, childbirth is the #1 cost, to actually getting them to sort of pay for the innovation that we require? And the other thing that it really requires is driving demand among the end users. Most people know what their pain points are, but they don't truly know what they deserve, because people will appropriate whether we give them a dignified way of doing it or not. And so whatever the status quo is normal. People are disrespected and abused in most settings. They consider it to be normal. In a place where 1 in 3 people get major abdominal surgery and 1 in 10 babies go to the NICU, most of us have sort of accepted that as normal. So we've got to get to a place where that's possible too. And that's why I'm glad there's so many people who are here wearing their hats is what we call patients, but just primarily as people first. So that's really all I have to say. Thanks very much.